debates can produce some fiery moments as candidates go on the offensive against their opponents. One of the best examples of that takes us back to the 1980s when John Turner, who was Prime Minister, and Brian Mulroney, who had become Prime Minister, went head-to-head in back-to-back campaigns.
I've told you and told the Canadian people, Mr. Mulroney, that I had no option.
Well, Truman, your next question. You had an option, sir. You could have said, I am not going to do it. This is wrong for Canada, and I am not going to ask Canadians to pay the price. You had an option, sir, to say no, and you chose to say yes to the old attitudes and the old stories of the Liberal Party. That, sir, if I may say respectfully, that is not good enough for Canadians.
I had no option if I was able to.
That is an avowal of failure. That is a confession of non-leadership, and this country needs leadership. You had an option, sir.
I happen to believe that you've sold us out. I happen to believe that once you...
Mr. Turner, just 1 second.
Once any
you
nation...
do not have a monopoly on patriotism. And I resent the fact that your implication that only you are a Canadian. I want to tell you that I come from a Canadian family and I love Canada. And that's why I did it, to promote prosperity. And don't you impugn my motives.
Economic levers.
Don't you impugn my motives or anyone else's.
So sometimes debates have the power to turn an election around. So how important is it these days, and is it worth tuning in? And does it paint a full picture of the leader's platform? Let's bring in Laura Stephenson. She is a professor and chair of political science at Western University, and she joins us now from London, Ontario. So from your perspective as a political scientist, how important are political debates these days?
Well, anytime we have debates, I think they're a great opportunity for voters to get a sense of the personalities of the leaders and to see how they handle themselves under hard questioning, and when they're kind of, stuck in a point where they can't just use their catchphrases maybe or have a set time. But I would say this debate is particularly important.
Yeah, but when I watched John Turner and Brian Mulroney there from 1984 and 1988, there was such a clash. It was so powerful. It was so interesting. And now I look, we'll have 5 leaders tomorrow, and I feel like we may not get those kinds of opportunities. Do you think the debates are still have the potential now that they did back in the 80s to turn an election around?
I mean, I think they can. And I'll say, especially when the voters are unfamiliar maybe with leaders or with some of the platforms that they're going to be asked about. And most importantly, it's an opportunity for voters to see the leaders talking about the same issues, right? So it's really a direct head-to-head.
So let's talk about the leaders here in these 2 debates, beginning with Mark Carney, who has not been a politician for very long. Really, we can count it in terms of weeks. What are you going to be watching for in his first debate?
Well, I'm really going to be watching to see how he carries himself. How does he communicate? How effective is he at entering into the fray with others who've had some more experience in this forum? How is he able to get his point across, and whether or not he finds himself kind of caught up maybe in some of the attacks from others?
And what about Pierre Poilievre?
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see whether he tries to change his message a little bit. I mean, he's had a couple of years now, right, where he's been very much focused on what the Liberals have done to Canada and how the Conservatives are the right alternative. And I think people are getting actually a little bit tired of some of the slogans that he's been using and the way he kind of puts forward the same focus all the time. And so it'll be interesting to see if he is able to kind of fully embrace the range of questions being asked.
In the old days, the pre-social media days, there was a lot of focus on coming up with the soundbite, so that even though a lot of people might have been tuning into the debate, even more would be tuning into various newscasts, and maybe all they would see or remember from the debate might be 25 seconds as opposed to 2 hours. What about the power of social media in terms of shaping people's view of the debate, especially those who choose not to watch the whole thing?
Well, instead of a soundbite, you might have a video clip, right? And it could be spread even quicker. And that's, I think, the most interesting part, because a lot of the power of the debates is not actually from the people who watch the debates. I mean, sure, it can change people's minds, but it's actually that reporting that happens after. And now it's not about what the journalists say, right? But it's instead, what does your friend tell you about, or what do you see them posting about that then gets reposted? And how does that make your view of the leaders change or not?
As a political scientist, we have you on the program not as a partisan, which you're not, but as someone who cares about and studies politics. So let's finish with this. Make your pitch for people who are watching who currently don't really want to watch the debates over the next couple of days. Why should they?
That's a really tricky question, because I have to say sometimes it is hard to hear people when they chat over each other and they're yelling a little bit during some of the debates. But I do think it's the best opportunity that we have to really see the leaders talking at the same time to each other on the same topics, and really be able to compare them in a way that you can't do when you're just reading platforms or you're seeing them in individual statements. Instead, you really get that, one-on-one kind of discussion, and I think that will help people to make up their minds about who they think would be the best person to lead the country.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with us this evening. And, I think I was doing this already, but definitely now looking forward to watching those debates. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.